education.
So question, so you said .73 is the no new revenue rate that essentially leaves the tax rate the same
After last year, except for your debt rate.
Right.
And it'll drop your revenues about $100,000.
Okay, so we have to have 90 days in reserves per our policy, right?
Right.
So how many days do we have right now?
Not even 60.
We don't even have 60 right now.
Now, I'll tell you what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have 1.5 million.
Yeah.
We got 1,057,000.
Okay.
I thought the other night you said we had 125. And you were
No.
saying 120 days.
We went back and went through it. We got 1,057,000. Our rate is 1.5 is what we're supposed to carry. We don't carry that. We're carrying it 1,057,000 right now, and that's about 400,000 less than what we should be carrying.
And what do we got in the water?
Water, I got 568,000.
Okay. But we're also in an emergency situation,
Well,
and that's what those funds are for.
I know, but you and I didn't.
I know they differ on them, and we're gonna butt heads, but this is what, and this was said last time, when I said this last year, they said, well, what if we have an emergency next year? Well, we got an emergency now. You know, to me, it's no different why the clarifier did what it did. It doesn't matter to me if lightning struck it, or a tornado struck it, or what happened. It's the same thing. It's an emergency situation, and that's what these funds are for. I just can't see we keep passing it off on the taxpayers. We got funds over here and there.
I agree with that, and I mean, I think in particular, you know, we didn't dip extra into reserves the last 2 years when we were dealing with what was obviously something we could call an emergency, for, you know, what COVID did to our budget. So, I mean, I don't disagree with John, and I mean, maybe, so what would that extra 100,000, if we left it at the no new revenue rate, what would that extra 100,000, how many days would we be at in reserves at that point?
We'll have to take it out of reserves, of course.
But that's what I'm saying, so how many days, so if we're approaching 60 right now, how many days would that have us down to?
If you take 100,000 off.
Yeah.
Scary times for us, but it's,
Well, I know, but
it's still gonna be close to that.
I mean, I still think to what John is saying, we are in an emergency. This isn't between what COVID did, what happened at the treatment plant. I think it's justifiable to say we are still in the middle of an emergency to where particularly if we've been operating at not even 60 to this point, you know, we talked the last 2 years when we upped the tax rate about what we needed to get done and get paid for, and I think that was legitimate. But I also do think that what John's saying is true, which is at some point, some year, we should be able to look at our citizens and say, we're going to leave it at what it was, factoring in obviously the valuation and all that other stuff. I mean, I don't want to cut that out of it. I want to see what you've proposed for the.
You're actually saying that we'll have a $280,000 deficit budget if we adopt what we've got now, or else we need to do some cutting.
No, I am saying if we need to be that far in the red this year, then we need to be that far in the red. It's a rough year, so no, I'm not saying we need to cut another thing out of that. I think y'all cut all the fat or fluff or anything you could out of that to begin with, so I'm not telling you to cut anything else out of it, and I'm not saying next year we need to be 200 in the red, but we've been dealing with an emergency and y'all have been keeping your head above water all this time, so I think if we dip into reserves that much this year, then first off, you wind up coming back every year better than you thought you would be as far as prior year.
Yeah.
So even if it starts as a 200, at the end of the year, you're going to be a lot better off than that based on every single year since I've been on this council. And so I just think this would be an acceptable time to go into reserves a little deeper, say we're leaving people's taxes where they are right now, and you know, next year, we've still got the right next year to look at it, and if
Well, it'd be 73 cents instead of 72.
Right, 73.
Yeah.
But it stays the no new revenue, which factors in valuation and everything, so,
Yeah.
So that's
And y'all can you don't do that tonight, of course.
Right.
You can do that on the 6th if you want to.
But no, I don't want to cut anything else out of here. You've already done an incredible job of getting it as close as you have.
Well, let me ask asked him this, for the future, EDC is sitting on a ton of money, and in an emergency situation, we can't even touch it. Period.
No, sir.
So, what are the odds of getting it on the November ballot to
We still,
reclassify? I want to rephrase this. Everybody keeps saying I'm trying to kill EDC. I want to reclassify it. It's no different than a board.
Andrea, can you help me a little bit on that? I think it's 71 days before the election you have to call it by.
We could look at that. I don't want to give you a wrong number.
I'm pretty sure it's 71 days, so we're setting very close. We would need to do it by next meeting probably.
I mean, they got 2 pieces of land, they're getting rent money, they're getting a chunk of the tax money. I think a part of that tax money should go to the general fund. I'm not talking about gutting it and anything else. We'll give them a budget every year, just like we do any other board.
And they told us last night they weren't gonna pay us for staff salaries too, so that...
Park board, we paid staff salary out of our budget. So that's, I don't know, I've heard that before, or nobody else does that. Staff should work for them then.
Well, that was the disappointing thing about hearing that was, I mean, we've got, you know, an independent, well, it's not an independent corporation, it's a part of the city, but at times it's convenient to portray itself as an independent corporation. They portray themselves as an independent corporation, but an independent corporation doesn't get free executive leadership for 20 years. And so I was a little bit, I'll just say right now.
Money in, I could not support what they were asking for, was just short of $150,000 coming out of EDC. That salary, to me, that is not an EDC function to pay salary.
How much time did he put into Grumps this last year? To me, it was a positive that the city wasn't asking EDC to make a transfer for this year to cover a portion of what he did. But just looking forward, I mean, that's not how a professional EDC gets run. I mean, the professional EDC pays for portions of employees that do EDC work. I mean, that's just how it is.
We haven't done it since '99.
We haven't done it, but that doesn't mean that that's not how it's done.
I know, but to me, I could not support that amount of money. It's not, I was just, my vote, one vote, said that I could not agree with that amount of money. We put some money in there, but we were not, as a board, we were not, sold that amount of money should come out of EDC. It wasn't an EDC function. It wasn't a justifiable expense to us.
Well, where would we be if we changed EDC's bylaws to where EDC had to hire its own executive director because the city manager didn't do it? Are you going to find somebody to do it, to do that, and to do what Paula does for EDC for
I'm against having someone of a paid, we've had 4 paid employees for that, and it hasn't worked out. I don't think we ought to pay someone.
But this is the problem. He is a paid employee that does EDC work. And so I'm not talking about an extra person. I'm saying if we change the bylaws to say the city manager is no longer the free executive director of EDC, and EDC has to now find somebody. You can't, there's no other corporation that call it a corporation. It's an arm of the city. We appoint and approve, but there's no other corporation that just sits by and has a free executive director that puts the amount of time that he puts into something. When Grumps gets here, he winds up doing the lion's share of it. I don't know if 50% was the right number or not, but Paul winds up doing minutes, doing postings, doing all this stuff. And so, to me, and I was not at the meeting last night, but I was told even at some point 25% was discussed, and 25% got shot down. It basically, in what I heard of it, sounded like EDC basically just threw their hands up and said, we don't want to pay for professional services. And
We didn't say that.
well, you passed it, how much of his salary is paid for in the budget that got passed last night? $0.
We put $10,000 in there.
Towards Blythe. Right. That went in there towards Blythe to be helping the president.
But
And that's a fair amount.
$15,000 or $20,000 for professional services, for consultant services that we have. You know, whether he uses it for him or Petty or whoever.
Right.
But there's money in there for professional
But it
consultants.
still looks at him as a free,